and I just wanted to jump on with you because 2 weeks ago now, I believe, I did a talk with the nutrition college that I went to, the Institute of Holistic Nutrition, or I stuttered that out, or IHN. And the whole purpose of the talk was about how, yes, nutrition is very important. It's something that I still see as like the backbone of anything that I do with clients, just because I understand the impact of what we put into our bodies that it makes on us. But my talk at IHN was about how there's a deeper layer to that. And sometimes we can work with a client and think, I'm giving them the perfect nutrition plan. But if they're not following through, that's where we can run into problems. And so, as a hypnotist, as an NLP coach, this is something. NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming, by the way. And it's all about like the patterns that your subconscious mind is running, the habits, and knowing that ultimately 90 to 95% of what we do on a daily basis is all controlled and driven by your subconscious mind. So, 5 to 10% of the time, you can consciously be trying to make a difference. But if 90 to 95% of the time you're resisting or you're falling back into old patterns or the habits haven't shifted, this can be really challenging as a nutritionist or as any coach working with clients or from the client perspective as well. And so after my discussion at IHN a couple weeks ago, I had this realization that, okay, I can create something that will help nutritionists and coaches who feel like some clients are getting incredible results and some clients are struggling. And it's around understanding how the mind works and how human beings function. And so, what I've been researching, studying, looking into recently is something that I learned a while ago that talks about how we have 5 personality drivers, 5 core drivers as human beings. And when you can start to understand what your drivers are, what your primary driver is, especially because we all use all of these in some ways in our life, but we will have one that is like our primary driver, and it's the one that it can cause us to resist change. It can also be the one that propels us forward. And when you start to understand what's going on in you, how you respond best, things get easier, which is cool. But also from a coaching perspective, I know what my drivers are, and so then when I'm working with a client that has the same drivers as me, the way that I coach lands in a different way than if I have someone who's like completely opposite end of the spectrum. So, okay, what are the 5 drivers? So the 5 drivers are freedom-minded person. There's a security-minded person. There's self-expressive or expression minded person. There's also belonging is another one. So how do I belong in this place? And does this challenge, this new thing that I'm trying on, is that going to help me belong better? Or is it going to pull me away from that important thing for me, which is belonging? And then 5 is competency. So freedom, security, competency, belonging, and expression. And so I know for myself, I am very competency and I'm also freedom is one of my needs. So if I try and give the way that I would do things to someone who's security minded, who that's their main driver, it may not work for them. This matters in so many different ways. This matters when it comes to if you're trying to make changes for your health. This matters in terms of relationships. This matters in terms of finance, in terms of your business, in terms of so many things in your life. And we can often get into something and then it's okay for a little bit. And then over time, it's just like, this isn't working for me. And as a coach, all of a sudden, there's clients that they ghost you, or they're just kind of falling off, or they're deviating from the plan in different ways. And it's like, I can't understand. And like in the past, I couldn't understand like why this was happening. And starting to understand this about myself, now I can transfer it over to clients as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of details on each of the 5 like core drivers, and just identify with yourself. See which one like really stands out for you the most. Because as I said, we all do all 5 in different ways, but we have one primary and we have one secondary. And if the primary is not supported, anything that you're trying to do, any relationship that you're getting into, any work environment that you're getting into, any change you're trying to make for yourself, it's not going to last because it doesn't align with the need or with the driver that you have. Okay. So, number one is freedom. And so, people with strong freedom driver, they like autonomy, they like choice, they like the feeling that they are directing their own life. And so, what works well for them is a flexible framework instead of a rigid system. They like options, they like multiple pathways, they like self directed goals, they like being trusted to figure things out, and they like clear outcomes, but freedom in terms of how they get there. They like things to be flexible and flowing. A motivator for them is I get to choose. So the freedom person is I get to choose. What are the things that often fail if you're a freedom person? Highly rigid plans often are a problem for freedom people. Strict schedules, micromanagement, being told exactly what to do step by step, and then feeling trapped or controlled. And an interesting thing that comes up often or has come up recently with a bunch of clients that I worked with, very freedom minded, but also what their secondary is competency. And so when those two come together, I hear often I'm a all or nothing person. I am an all or nothing person. So it works well for them in some ways, but then in some ways it's too rigid. And so they're not moving forward. So there is other ways to work around this as well. So that's your freedom person. They start strong. This is the person who starts strong, but suddenly stop once it begins to feel too restrictive, hence the all or nothing. They're all in, and then all of a sudden it's like they just can't keep going with it. And it's not consciously, they're not rebelling or not trying to cause problems. It's just bumping up against what's really the most important for them. Number two, polar opposite in a sense. So, a plan that I give to a freedom minded person, as I'm freedom minded as well. So, I used to give stuff and I was like, oh, okay, well, this works really well for me. This will work for all my clients because I know the biology, I know the biochemistry and like the whole makeup of the body and how to give a perfect meal plan, blah, 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 whatever. But if I give the same thing to these two different people, the freedom and the security, it will work great for one of them and not for the other one. And so security driver people are motivated by safety, by predictability, and by stability as well. So this is the person that I can give a rigid meal plan to, and they're happy because they're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Freedom minded people will say that as well, but they need flexibility. They need it to be fluid. They're the ones that change your meal plan mid program, and you're just like, I don't understand. That was me in the past. Security people like clear step by step plans. They like consistent routines. They like gradual change rather than big leaps because the whole thing is they want to know like, do I feel safe here? That's really important for security people. They like predictable schedules. They also like knowing the risks. The motivator for a security person is I know what to expect. And what often fails for security people is rapid change, is high uncertainty, is risky strategies, and also like ambiguous instructions. So, like the loose, fluid approach that works for a freedom person does not work well for the security person. Typical result for them is they delay action if they feel insecure or unsafe. So that's two. We've done freedom and we've talked about security as well. And if any of these stand out for you, like just drop in the chat what makes sense for you or what one do you think like, oh my God, that's me. If you're watching the replay, for sure participate as well. These are really interesting things for us to understand as humans as well, because the more you know about yourself, then the next time you get into something new or you want to try something new, these are things that you can consider for yourself. Does this fit into the things that work well for me, or is this going to be something I bump up against in the future? So, number three is the expression driven person. So, these people need creativity, they need individuality, they need the ability to be seen and heard. This is the client that I'm working with, and they'll always say, no one understands me because they feel different. They feel like They don't fit in the or in the traditional mold, in the traditional way of doing things. These can often be the "I've tried everything, nothing works for me," because 'cause I'm just different and no one understands me. And so what works well for the self-expressive or the expression-based person is creative freedom. So is personalization, feeling like it's custom to them, is opportunities to share ideas, and recognition of their voice and their uniqueness. I know you're so unique. That's often really helpful for this kind of this personality. And a good motivator for these people as well is I get to be myself. That's really important for someone who self-expression is their main driver. And so, what often fails for these people is strict rules about how things must be done, being forced into conformity, and highly repetitive or boring tasks. Typical result for the self expressive person is they disengage if they feel boxed in. Cool. Do we have any self expressive people? No. Okay. So, four, this is the belonging driver. So, the belonging driven people thrive on connection, on teamwork, on feeling part of something. And what works well for them is community environments, is group accountability, is shared goals, encouragement and support, feeling included in all decisions. And so this is the client that I'll be working with. And if I'm asking them to make nutrition changes, because a lot of my journey and my history around MS and getting rid of my symptoms and like getting to the point of 10 years symptom free, nutrition was a big part of it. And as I said, nutrition still is a big focus on what I think is important when it comes to making changes. But when nutrition involves making changes where you feel or the feeling could be that I'm going to get criticized if I go somewhere and I'm eating differently, or it's going to like take away my sense of belonging, that can be a really big challenge for someone who has belonging as the forefront of their personality needs and of as their identity. And so it's like, how can we give them the ability to make choices that still do support their health, but also still support this belonging driver? So the motivator is I'm a part of something for them. So what often can fail, like I said, isolation is number one that can fail, but if you feel like the way that you're changing your health is gonna take you away from the place where you belong and you fit in, that can be a challenge. Solo accountability systems can be really challenging here too. Feeling excluded or misunderstood, and then harsh criticism are a challenge for the belonging people. And then typical result for this person is they lose motivation when they feel disconnected. They lose motivation when they feel disconnected. Hence, making really strict changes or asking them to do things that are going to take them away from that sense of belonging is a big challenge. And then the fifth personality type, fifth driver is competency. And so, competency driven individuals are motivated by mastery, effectiveness, improvement. And what works really well for these people is clear performance metrics, skill development, measurable progress, and learning frameworks. They like systems for improvement. And a motivator for them is I'm getting better. What often fails, though, is vague goals, is poorly structured programs, is being told just trust the process without logic or lack of feedback. And the typical result for this person is going to be they disengage when progress feels unclear. So, learning how to understand the personality type that you are, as I said, is going to be very beneficial for you when it comes to the choices that you make of what things to engage into. That can be in relationships. And yes, we don't usually go on a date with someone and say, like, okay, well, I just need to know what is your personality type and your key driver, because that's going to help me know if this is a good fit and if this is a good use of my time. But we can start to pick up on things when working with people, when meeting people and engaging with them and just kind of seeing what are the things that show up for them. I had a really interesting experience last week. I guess interesting, but not. This happens to me all the time. But I went to BNI, which is my business networking group. And we were hanging out in the coffee room at the beginning. And then somehow the conversation came up around um, the personality types. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And I did a read on some of the people in the room. And the one girl I was talking to, and I was like, you are self expressive. And she was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I said, like, the way you show up and the way people perceive you and see you in the room is important to you. And she's like, heck yeah, it is. I mean, self-expressive is one that's often fairly easy to pick out because I watch people and I just notice how they're presenting themselves and how they're showing up. I mean, all of these I notice through nonverbals because 70% of our communication doesn't come from our mouths. And so what are the ways that the person is interacting with the group and with the room and different things, and then the self-expressive is usually easy to pick out because it's what are they wearing? There was a girl standing next to her when we were talking about this, and she's like, "Well, how do you know that?" And I looked at her and I was like, "You are too." She had, like, silver shoes on. Self-expressive. Someone who's trying to be a wallflower and kinda hide and not be seen is not going to dress in bright, fancy clothes. So that's an easier piece to pick up, but there is so much more to it than that. So when you start to take a look at this as a coach, it makes a huge difference because getting to know your client gives you so much understanding in terms of how you can help them better, how you can help them get their goals in a way that's not as hard for them, not as hard for you as the coach either. So this is I am going to put together a course for like a mini course for nutritionists because I think this will be very valuable for them but also for their clients to start to get to the goals that they want. But as a human, this is important for you to know as well. So when it comes to relationships, when it comes to like things you're trying to do for your health, things you're trying to do in business, if I go into a job or someone who's like very freedom minded goes into a job that's very rigid, that doesn't give them any flexibility, doesn't give them any opportunity to um, kind of go with the flow of things, it's just like strict, rigid rules and like it's not gonna last. You're gonna get burnt out and not feel great. If you're someone who's security minded and you go into a job that's just like loose and like airy-fairy and just like, yeah, no, whatever. Do whatever you want. It's no big deal. The sense of security, they don't feel that there. They're not gonna last in that job either. So this applies in so many different ways of our life, and many people often don't realize this. So, anyways, I just kind of rambled on because I find this so fascinating. It's something I've been really getting into recently. And this is an upcoming, I think in May, there's going to be a meetup that I'm going to do talking about this and then just kind of get within conversation with people about, okay, so what one lands for you? And how has this shown up in your life in areas where you've had challenges? And how can we start to help you move in a direction where you're focusing on what would be a better solution for you? So, 5 main personality types, personality drivers: freedom, security, competency, belonging, and self expressive. What are you? What's your main one? Really think about it. If you want to listen to this video again, and I really broke down like what are the things that are good for you, what are things that are going to work well, and what are the things that are going to cause you challenges. And so when you can start to embrace who you are in this sense and understand how this matters for you, like things get so much easier in your life. Success happens without as much of a struggle and a fight. So I would love to know. Drop it in the chat. Which one lands the most for you? Which one is like, oh, yeah, that's me. Or if you have questions about this or you'd like to have a conversation about it, I love doing that as well. So send me a DM. We can have a chat. Or I will drop the link. Actually, it hasn't been letting me. On Meetup, I have a group there called Burlington NLP and Personal Change group. And we have like fantastic conversations monthly. The next one is coming up on March 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to talk about why it's easy to do things for other people and hard to do things for yourself. These 5 personality drivers are a big part of that as well. So I am Kate from Align Natural Health. Hopefully you got some value from this. Hopefully you have a wonderful weekend. It's 17 degrees in Ontario today in March, which is crazy. If the rain would die off a little bit, I would definitely be outside. But enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.